Welcome back to the weekly download. Tonight we've got a mix of local tension, global tech madness, and a little something that might make you rethink how everything connects. Let the download commence. So, Belize is once again arguing over the HPV vaccine in schools because apparently every health discussion here eventually turns into spiritual warfare. The vaccine helps protect against cancers like cervical cancer, but now the church and government are backing another standoff. And my hot take is the schools should allow access to this vaccine the way they allow access to other medications within the schools. Now, parents absolutely deserve a say. Faith matters, public health matters too. And if schools were handing out vaccines like the free samples with no parental consent, then yes, that would be a problem. But with written consent involved, this is ultimately about protecting young women from potentially developing cervical cancer later in life. And honestly, prevention should not become more controversial than the disease itself. So, AI may be able to flick that wrist for you. Yeah, apparently, MIT students created an AI system that can move your hand using electrical muscle stimulation, which means technology has officially reached the point where your body can now catch software updates. Wonderful. Imagine pausing in the middle of a task because your hand lags since the rain. But honestly, the technology is kind of impressive. If AI can help people with mobility issues, rehabilitation, or teach small skills, I support that. Helping somebody hold a cup steady, beautiful. Helping somebody relearn movement after an injury, amazing. But there needs to be limits. Small hand movements only. Maybe we can use it for the greater good of humanity, like stopping you from texting your ex after 2 rum and cokes. Canada has now updated its travel advisory for Belize, warning travelers to exercise a high degree of caution following the recent state of emergency in parts of Belize City and surrounding communities. And while that headline speaks to security, it also quietly speaks to something else we don't often connect directly: how insecurity reshapes everyday life beyond the news cycle. Because when a country enters a period of heightened violence, the effects don't stay limited to patrols, checkpoints, or curfews. They begin to influence how people move, how businesses operate, and ultimately how much it costs to simply function. The World Bank has documented this pattern in high violence environments, noting that insecurity increases the cost of doing business through added security, transport, and insurance expenses. In practice, that means companies don't just factor in fuel and imports, they also factor in risk. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime adds that violence has broader indirect economic costs, including reduced tourism, lower investment confidence, and long-term disruptions to productivity. For a country like Belize, where tourism and small business activity are central to the economy, those indirect pressures matter. Even academic work on organized crime shows how insecurity introduces what economists call transaction costs, which are extra, often invisible costs that arise simply from operating in unsafe environments. No, none of this is to suggest that violence is the only driver of rising costs in Belize. Global inflation, fuel prices, and supply chains all play a role. But what this moment does raise is a quieter question. When safety becomes uncertain, does everything else slowly become more expensive to sustain? Because in the end, what we see in travel advisories and emergency regulations is only one layer. The deeper story is how instability over time reshapes the everyday economy that people rely on long after the headline fades. Now, I want to hear from you. Seriously? Besties, what do you think is actually driving this surge in violence right now? Is it deeper than what we're seeing on the surface, or are we just stuck in another cycle we refuse to break? And that's tonight's weekly download. We've covered school vaccine debates, AI trying to become your personal puppet master, and the uncomfortable question of what rising insecurity is quietly doing to the cost of everyday life. Stay safe out there, besties. Download complete.